It all started on a quiet Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee on the deck of my yacht, which was peacefully anchored in the lake behind my house. It was my little slice of heaven: calm waters, open skies, and complete silence. That is, until a knock on my front door broke the calm. Standing there were two members of the neighborhood HOA, clipboards in hand and scowls on their faces. Without even a hello, one of them barked, "You can't leave your yacht on the lake. It's against HOA rules." I blinked, almost amused. See, what I didn't know was, I *own the lake. At first, I tried to explain politely, told them it might be best if they double-checked their documents before making demands. But they didn't want to hear it. Instead, they doubled down, tossing around words like community guidelines and shared resources. The real kicker: they were in the middle of planning a neighborhood fishing party on the lake, *lake, and they hadn't asked me, let alone invited me. As they walked away, one of them muttered something about fines and removal orders. That's when I realized, maybe it was time to remind them who actually had the upper hand here. They thought they were dealing with just another homeowner, but they were about to find out that the water they wanted to control wasn't theirs to claim. And let's just say, the fishing party didn't quite go as planned. As I stood there, watching the HOA members walk away with their smug expressions, a part of me couldn't believe what had just happened. I mean, how could they not know who owned the lake? It wasn't exactly a small, insignificant detail. My family had bought the property years ago, and when we did, we made sure to secure the lake as part of the deal. It was more than just a piece of land to us, it was a legacy. Growing up, we spent summers swimming, fishing, and celebrating birthdays on those waters. To see people who didn't even respect the boundaries of their own community now trying to boss me around felt wrong, almost personal. I started to think about the bigger picture. The HOA had always been a little overbearing, but this was something else. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like this was less about the yacht and more about power. They didn't like that I wasn't playing by their rules, and now they were going to try to push me around. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I spent the next few hours looking over the legal documents that proved I owned the lake. I called up a few old friends who knew the ins and outs of HOA regulations, just to make sure I was right. But deep down, I already knew the answer. They were messing with the wrong person, and I wasn't about to back down. But the question nagged at me: why had they even planned a fishing party there in the first place? Had they been trying to make a statement, or was there something else going on? That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing. The HOA's request to move my yacht was just the beginning. I could feel it in my bones. They weren't going to just let this go. They were going to come back with something harder, something more aggressive. I had heard rumors about the HOA's past tactics, about how they could be ruthless when they didn't get their way. But I had no idea how deep their reach really went. I started to wonder about the fishing party. Why had they suddenly chosen my lake for their event? In the years I'd lived here, I hadn't once heard of a community fishing event on this particular body of water. Sure, they had their barbecues by the clubhouse or movie nights in the park, but this was different. The timing felt deliberate. Maybe they were trying to push me into a corner, to test my boundaries. But why? Had I unknowingly offended someone in the HOA ranks? I reached out to my neighbor, Janet, who had lived in the community far longer than I had. She was well-connected and knew more about the politics of the HOA than anyone. After a bit of small talk, I finally got around to asking her about the fishing party. She hesitated at first, as if debating whether or not to share something that could stir up trouble. Then, lowering her voice, she said, "You don't know. The HOA's been planning to take control of the lake for years. They've been slowly buying up small pieces of property around it, convincing people to sell out. Your lake, it's the last piece they need." My heart sank. I had no idea. The thought of someone trying to take what was rightfully mine stirred up a fire inside me. But this wasn't just about property anymore. This was about something deeper, something much more personal. It was clear now. The HOA didn't just want my yacht moved. They wanted to control everything, and they weren't going to stop until they had it all. As I stood there, piecing together the puzzle, I realized that my yacht wasn't the only thing at stake anymore. I had to decide whether I was going to stand my ground or risk losing everything I had worked so hard for. The next few days felt like an endless waiting game, each moment stretching out longer than the last. I kept my yacht where it was, ignoring the HOA's threatening calls and emails. They were persistent, but I wasn't budging. Every time I heard the distant hum of an engine on the lake, I wondered if it was them, sending a warning or trying to intimidate me further. Janet's warning weighed heavily on my mind. The HOA had been working behind the scenes for years, and I had unknowingly become the last obstacle in their way. They weren't just asking for my yacht to be moved. They were making a move to take control of my entire property. It felt like I was being cornered, with no way out. Every decision I made could cost me everything, and I had no idea what their next move would be. On the morning of the fishing event, I got an anonymous tip. Someone had seen a group of HOA members sneaking around my property, taking photos and making notes. It was obvious now, they weren't just planning a party. They were setting up for something more. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, like the walls were closing in. That afternoon, I took a walk along the edge of the lake, trying to clear my head. The water looked peaceful, almost mocking in its stillness, but beneath the surface, I knew there was a storm brewing. I couldn't help but wonder how far the HOA was willing to go to get what they wanted. They had money, influence, and years of experience manipulating homeowners. What chance did I have against them? As I turned back toward the house, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A group of figures standing at the edge of the lake, staring at my yacht. I froze, my heart racing. They were standing too close, too deliberately. It wasn't just a fishing party. They were staking their claim, making it clear that they intended to push me out, once and for all. I had no more time to waste. Something had to be done, and it had to be done now. I stood there, staring at the group by the lake, my mind racing. It was like they were daring me to make the next move. But what could I do? It felt like they already had me in check. As I started walking toward them, I heard a low murmur coming from behind me. I turned around, half expecting to see one of the HOA members trying to get the upper hand, but instead, it was a car pulling up, my lawyer. I hadn't expected to see him today. The last time we'd spoken, he'd assured me he would be in touch if things escalated, but I hadn't heard from him since. His appearance caught me off guard. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised but also relieved. He wasn't someone who made house calls unless it was serious. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "I've been following up on something, and you're going to want to hear this." His face was tight with concern. "You're not the only one the HOA's been targeting." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "They've been slowly buying up property around the lake for months, sure, but there's more. I just found out. They've been working with an outside company, a development group. Their endgame isn't just control over the lake. They want to turn it into a resort, commercialize everything." I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just about my yacht anymore. It was about a major development project that would change everything about the community. My family's land, the peaceful lake, even the quiet neighborhood where I had spent so many years, gone. "They plan to bulldoze the entire area," he continued, eyes narrowing. "And guess what? They already have the permits lined up. They've been working with the town's zoning board behind your back." My mind reeled. The pieces were falling into place, and the stakes were much higher than I'd ever imagined. They weren't just trying to move my yacht. They were preparing to take everything from me, to destroy the very thing I had fought to protect for so long. Before I could say anything, the sound of a boat engine revving broke my thoughts. I turned quickly to see a sleek, expensive boat approaching the shore. The figures standing by the lake straightened up and exchanged glances. Then, as if on cue, they walked toward the boat. My stomach dropped as I realized it wasn't just a party. This was the moment they were making their final play. I had to act, but everything I had worked for, everything I'd trusted, was slipping away right in front of me. I didn't waste another second. Without thinking, I marched down to the lake, my lawyer close behind me. The figures by the water hadn't noticed us yet, but I knew that time was running out. When the boat docked, one of the HOA members stepped out, a smug look on his face. He was the same one who had come to my door, demanding I move my yacht. This time, however, he wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. I walked up to him, my voice firm. "You've been lying to me. You've been planning to take my land, my lake, and turn it into something I don't recognize. But it's not happening, not on my watch." He tried to play it off with a smile, but it didn't fool anyone. That's when my lawyer stepped in. "We've got the paperwork, the legal documents that show the HOA has been colluding with a development company to make this happen without proper consent, and you've been violating zoning laws." The smug expression quickly faded from his face. He realized he was out of options, out of time. The boat wasn't just a recreational one anymore. It was a symbol of their greed, their attempt to seize control over something that wasn't theirs to take. Within a week, the HOA's plans unraveled. The development permits were rescinded, and the community rallied behind me. My yacht remained where it belonged, and the peaceful lake was safe from their corporate takeover. I had stood my ground, not just for my yacht, but for the home and legacy my family had built. Looking back, I realized it wasn't just about the lake or the yacht. It was about taking a stand against those who thought they could take control without consequences. I'd won that battle, but it had shown me that in the end, it's always worth fighting for what's yours.